So I want to think just this morning about the wise men. Before I start talking, I want you to watch a little video.
Christmas isn't just a time to decorate your house, to spend time with loved ones, and to open long-awaited presents. Christmas is a time to remember. To remember that salvation doesn't come from within, it comes from above. To remember that infinitely better than the magic of Christmas is the miracle of Emmanuel. To remember that God was not and is not untouched by the pain and suffering of this world. To remember that Jesus isn't just part of the Christmas story, but Christmas is part of the Jesus story. To remember that there is no grace without a cross and no cross without a manger. To remember that Jesus doesn't just want us to remember what he did, but to join him in what he is doing. So this year, let the lights remind you of the light of the world who came into darkness for us. Let the gifts remind you of the greatest gift of all. And this year, make your heart like Bethlehem and receive the King.
It's quite an important message, isn't it? That we think seriously about Christmas, what it really means and what it's really about. And I want to go back to the wise men in Matthew chapter 2, and the passage that I read just a bit earlier. And I want us to think about the different characters, or some of the different characters that were played out in that little passage. And I want us to think first of all about Herod. I mean, I don't know if you know much about King Herod, but he was not like politicians of today. He was ruthless. Maybe it is politicians today, I don't know. He was determined. He was going to hold on to power no matter what. And if you were a threat to his throne, he was going to have you. Yeah, he took no prisoners. He was absolutely determined. He was king and he was in charge. So I want you to imagine what the scene would have been like when up strolled these wise men and said, "Hi, we've heard there's a new king in town." And Herod goes, "You what?" And I want you to think about why it says, when King Herod heard this, he was deeply disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. I can imagine everybody else was saying, "Oh no, they've done it now. He's going to go off the deep end. He's going to want to know who this new king possibly is. He's going to want to know where it's going to." We can feel the trouble coming. King Herod's going to get really cross and really upset, and he's going to make our lives very difficult till he sorts this. He was in charge and he was not going to let go. And that made me think about the scribes, because it then says, "So he assembled the chief priests and scribes of the people and said to them, 'Where's this new king?'" Can you imagine if you were a scribe or a chief priest at that time and you got summoned to the king who said, "All right then, tell me what's going on," and you're going, Can you imagine? It was like put on the spot, really. What I find fascinating about these scribes, see, King Herod, he was only interested in one thing. He was interested in being king. That's all he was interested in. He ran the show, full stop, that was it. The scribes, they come along and King Herod said, "Tell me, where's this new king?" Now, what's interesting is they knew about the promised king. They knew about it. They'd heard. They'd read the scriptures. So they said, "Oh, there's a prophecy about that, King Herod. Here you go." And then they quickly stepped back. You see, the scribes and the rulers, they knew about this new king. They knew the truth. They didn't do anything about it. They just wanted to keep in the background. Which leads me to think about the wise men. There's so much we could go into about the wise men. Did anybody see any pictures of the Christmas star that's been around recently? Weren't they amazing? I've got one on my phone. Unfortunately, I should have put it on a slide, shouldn't I? I could have showed you. But beautiful star shining in the night sky. It's actually a planet. 2 planets, sorry, who are aligned and making it doubly bright. But what I would say is this. These wise men, let's get a few things straight. They were not Jewish. This was not their God. They came from a long way in search of a special king. They invested their time and their money to fight. They searched for this king. And they didn't stop until they found him. And then I want you to imagine the scene. So we've got a nice nativity scene here. Yeah, we've got a baby and the parents and a manger, and we've got shepherds over on this side, and we've got wise men over on that side. Probably they didn't turn up at the same time. That's great for the kids. In reality, there's probably a little bit of a difference. But I want you to imagine, here's Mary and Joseph with baby Jesus. Maybe there were a few other people around at the time. And this caravan turns up. This all these rich people on camels with their entourage, with all their servants, turn up to see your new baby. I don't know about you, but if I was a young parent and that happened, I would be a little bit nervous, thinking, what's going on? And I want you to think a bit more about this. Can you imagine the scene where there's this newborn baby, and in come these very rich people in their fine clothes with their expensive gifts, and then they get down on their knees and they bow down on the floor to your baby. Can you see how dramatic this is? How unusual this is? And when I read about the wise men, there's a couple of words that just jumped out for me. And I want to draw your attention again to verse 10. When they saw the star, it settled over Bethlehem where they were going, they were overwhelmed with joy. Joy. When you know that Jesus is king, when you know that he's special, it brings joy. When you know, because we've been thinking about Emmanuel, God with us, we've been thinking about Jesus, which means Saviour. And if you know that this is God with me, this is Jesus my Saviour, this is Jesus who is the Christ, the Anointed One, the Lord. When you know that, there's joy. And then they worshipped and they bowed down. Amazing. Incredible scene. And I thought to myself, Christmas Day, right, what can we focus on this morning? What can we think about this morning in all the strangeness of this Christmas? I want us to think of a couple of simple things. Remind us of a couple of simple things. The wise men tell me something. The wise men tell me that it's really important to know who Jesus is. You see, Herod wanted to stay king of his own life and wasn't prepared to let go of the reign. If we want Jesus to be our God with us, if we want Jesus to be our Saviour, then we have to wrestle with the fact that Jesus is Lord. And we can't stay king of our own lives if we want Jesus to be king of our lives. It's one or the other. So I want us to think and honestly think we must not be like the scribes who knew the truth but didn't do anything with it. And so I want to encourage us all today to think, we could have heard the story. We can know the gospel. We can know all about Jesus being Lord and God. We can get all of that. But is he actually my God, my Lord, today? Not just someone who I signed a piece of paper to say, yeah, I'll be a Christian 25 years ago. But what about today? Am I living as Jesus as my Lord today? In the midst of all that's happening in this world, do I trust and follow Jesus today as my God and as my Lord? And if we get that, there will be joy. Yeah, I honestly, I'm not saying you'll be happy all the time. I'm not saying that. I know that in life there is sadness. But one of the things I'm utterly convinced of more than ever before is this. If you are genuinely following Jesus Christ as your Lord and your Saviour, there will be a joy in your life that will surface in and through and despite any and every situation that we face. Because it's deep down inside of you and it comes up. Because one of the evidences, one of the fruits of the Spirit, yes, is love, but joy. And joy follows very close to love. And as part of knowing God, there is a joy in our lives because God is so amazing. And so I want to encourage us, if you've not felt the joy recently, get back to Jesus. Reconnect with Jesus and discover the joy. And then finally, that encounter with Jesus as Lord, that means we will end up worshipping. And I just want to say, just read about heaven. There's a lot of worship goes on in heaven. There's a lot of loud worship that goes on in heaven. Do you know what? There are so many cultures and languages in heaven. Half the time, I'm not even sure if we will understand it all, but we will know it's worship. And can I just suggest, some of it might not be to our taste, but that's okay. Because it's not for us. It's for Jesus. And he likes it all. And we need to get back to that heart of worship where actually it doesn't really matter about what's happening. It doesn't really matter about whether the carol's the version of the carol that I like or not. Is my heart reaching out to God in worship. That's what matters. And so this Christmas, more than any, I pray that you do know Jesus as Lord. I pray that you will know the joy of having Christ as your Saviour. And I pray and I hope that you will have the opportunity just to worship him. Whether it be here, whether it be a moment at home. If you find you've got a few spare minutes and you don't know quite what to do, just sit down for a minute and just pray and worship him. Give him thanks for all he is. You might not have time. You might be too busy cooking your Christmas dinner. I don't know. But if you do have a moment, stop. Give him thanks and give him praise. If you're not sure that you know how to do that, or if you don't think you're a Christian or a follower of Jesus, then I'm just going to say you need to think about it. Because this is the true King. This is the real King. And one day we will all have to meet him face to face. So we need to come to terms with that. Be like the wise men. Follow Jesus. It's simple. It's very old. It's a very corny saying, but it's very true.